Hello and welcome to November 2021, where we're all being exposed to a cocktail of the COVID virus, pollutants and dengue-carrying mosquitoes. COVID cases are once again being reported in Delhi. Dengue cases have seen an increase compared to last year, and there's an air pollution crisis. Under these circumstances, how can we protect our health? Joining us now is Dr. Randeep Guleria of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Guleria, thank you so much for your time. The national capital, after a gap of 20 days, reported 2 deaths on Friday due to COVID-19. Delhi has recorded over 50 new COVID cases for the second day in a row. 62 people tested positive for the virus yesterday. That's the highest number that we've seen in about 3 months. Dr. Guleria, what do you make of these numbers? What should one make of them? Is this a red flag? I mean, I don't want to sound alarmist because everybody's many people have gotten doubly vaccinated, and we have zero positivity studies being done. But yet at the same time, there's a sense of deja vu compared to last year. We kind of saw the same kind of slow rise in numbers before we headed into the second wave.
Yes, correct. So I think the most important thing to remember is that the pandemic is not over as yet. And although we are seeing a few cases as compared to what we were seeing in the past, if you look at what's happening in Europe and other parts of the world, then there's a huge surge in the number of cases. Keeping that in mind, it's very important that we be vigilant, and any rise or any trend towards a rising number of cases should be a red flag, and we should actually have measures in place so that this trend is halted and we don't allow the number of cases to spiral out of control. At the same time, we need to push aggressively for vaccination, because vaccination does prevent against serious illness. Even if the cases make sure that people land up in hospital like they did last second wave, which was a huge degree of as far as COVID is concerned.
So, so these zero positivity among Delhi's population, that doesn't really guarantee protection against COVID, does it?
So zero positivity would give you protection against severe disease. Currently, it's important for us to understand, and that is why even after vaccination, one says that COVID appropriate behavior is still very important, because you may still get the infection. The vaccination prevents you from getting serious illness and decreases you or prevents you from dying because of COVID-19. But you will still get the infection and you could spread it to others, and that could lead to more cases, that could lead to the high-risk group getting COVID and therefore needing to increase hospitalization. And also it could also give the virus a chance to mutate and develop an immune escape mechanism, which could be a worrisome thing in the future.
But during the second wave especially, the problem was more of a lack of healthcare infrastructure to help those who needed it when they needed it the most, right? And the rise in COVID cases comes now at a time when the national capital is also grappling with a double whammy. We have rising dengue, and we have, I should say, triple whammy, and we have severe air pollution. So at a time when we're already getting patients with respiratory issues due to pollution and dengue, then to have this rise in COVID, that could create problems for our healthcare infrastructure. Is that a concern?
Definitely. I think we must understand that the healthcare structure already is stretched because of the fact that we have not only a good number of cases of dengue, and like you said, there is also increasing people coming to the emergency with respiratory and cardiac problems because of the air quality that we're seeing in the Indo-Gangetic belt. But also there is an increasing number of cases of influenza that we're seeing. And that is also known to happen during this time of the year when winter sets in. And therefore, to have a now surge in cases of COVID-19 will really lead to problems in hospitalization in hospitals, because we will really not be able to manage or admit everyone who needs admission because of the increased number of cases. So the focus has to be on prevention. How can we prevent this from really spiraling out of control and having more and more hospital admission?
And you know what, doctor, when we see, and I'm sure you feel the same, when you see these crowds at the markets, etc., you find it difficult to believe where we live in the same city that was struggling to find beds and oxygen in hospitals, where you could hear ambulances round the clock at night. that said, the other big story today was the Supreme Court coming down hard on the states and the centre on air pollution, asking if a 2-day lockdown is required, ordering basically the centre and the states to say we need, forget about the long-term solution right now, give us something immediate for the next 2 to 3 days to make sure we can get through the next 2 to 3 days. How serious is it that the court has to say that you have to have an air emergency plan by Monday?
So this is a serious issue, and we've been through this every year. Every year we see AQI going very high. I remember a time a few years ago when AQI was 999, and it was not that it was 999. The recording could not go beyond 999 because they never imagined that the air quality would be so bad that they will have to have 4 digits rather than 3 digits. And that's why it stopped at 999. But the message that we need to really push forward is that this affects the effects not only as far as healthy people are concerned, really those who are having underlying cardiac and respiratory problems. Many patients who are of mine who actually move out of Delhi, they start staying with children or their other relatives during this time of the year because their respiratory problem increases, they need more nebulization, some of them have to take oxygen, and therefore this is not something which is good. And we need to find a solution. An immediate solution, of course, is to identify what are the emitting sectors and can we really decrease the emission that is happening. It could be from vehicular traffic, it could be from construction, it could be from crop burning, but that emission has to stop. You must understand that Delhi and the Indo-Gangetic belt is a landlocked area. So when there is pollution and when the weather is such that there is hardly any wind, and there is the pollutants are not able to move out or there is no dispersion, then for days or weeks you will have this smog which will cause a huge effect as far as the health of this area is concerned.
Dr. Gulere, I want to just go across to other questions that our viewers have been asking us. There's been a study that says that patients with COVID history add to the diabetes case burden. This is what there was a hospital, leading hospital, Indraprastha Apollo Hospital Authority said in Delhi that at least 25% of newly reported diabetes cases had a confirmed history of COVID-19 and they cited their OPD data of close to 2 years. Your thoughts on this?
So we need a more cause and effect relationship, but there is data which suggests that COVID does affect the pancreatic gland, which is where insulin is produced, and can lead to diabetes. This is one of the multi-system involvement that COVID can have. Remember, once when we started talking about COVID in the beginning, we looked at it only as a respiratory infection causing pneumonia and respiratory problems. But we subsequently realized that the virus causes inflammation of the blood vessels, it causes multiple organ involvement, including the heart, the brain, and other systems, and this includes the pancreas also. So diabetes is one manifestation which is there also as part of a COVID complication. But what is the exact percentage and how frequent is it is something that needs to be evaluated in more detail.
Okay. The other big question that's really worrying, especially for parents now, is this whole dengue outbreak where we're hearing and increasingly reading that children are more at risk. This year, it's the worst really outbreak in 3 years. Tripura has had the highest dengue cases in 5 years. Why are doctors saying that children are bearing the brunt this time?
So I think it's very important to understand that when we talk of vector-borne disease, especially dengue, it does have a little bit of a cyclic form that you have a few years when your immune system is good, then the virus changes from dengue one subtype to the other subtype, and this can lead to increasing number of cases. Secondly, children, because of the fact sometimes they're not protected, they're playing outside and they get exposed to mosquito bites, they tend to have dengue more frequently and sometimes it can be serious in them if proper precautions are not taken. So it's very important that again we focus on prevention. And since this is a vector-borne disease transmitted through mosquito, we have to work aggressively on preventing mosquito feeding, whether it be indoor or outdoor. So that the transmission of dengue can be stopped.
Okay, and doctors have been pointing to rising cases of multiple organ failure. How does one know when one needs to hospitalize a dengue patient?
So there are two parts in dengue that are very important. Dengue in majority of people, more than 90 to 95%, is usually a illness which has fever, which is high grade with headache, body ache. You can have a skin rash. It can be also some degree of severe back pain. In majority of people, it settles by about 5 to 7 days. But sometimes after the fourth, fifth day, when the fever starts coming down, then you either have what we call dengue shock syndrome, that your blood pressure starts falling, there is leakage of fluid from the vessels into the soft tissue, and you can go into a dengue shock syndrome where you need to have IV fluids, intravenous medication is required, or you can have dengue hemorrhagic fever where your platelets come down and there's bleeding at various sides, and that is why you have to be very careful. So once the fever started coming down, and children, and if you have a child or an adult is drowsy, is not responding, or there is a rash or swelling, the person should be admitted, because at times you need intravenous fluid. Aggressive treatment can actually help to save that.
Aggressive treatment and early treatment, I think. Doctor, can you get dengue more than once?
Yes, you can get dengue more than once, and there is some data which suggests that if you get dengue once and then you get it again with the other subtype, you can have a hyperinflammatory response which can make dengue more severe. So you can get dengue more than once, and at times when you get it again, it can be a little bit more severe.
And this is another question many are asking. Is it possible to get COVID and dengue at the same time? Just sounds horrific.
It is possible. Both are different viral infections. One is through vectors, and the other is, of course, airborne respiratory infection. You can get dengue and COVID together, and I think there are some reports of being quoted in some patients having both infections at the same time.
And lastly, there are these, everybody then wonders, what can one do? We're hearing so many, yoginis, etc., giving advice on how you can take certain pills, etc., to keep yourself safe from dengue. That is clearly not true, because you're saying it comes from the bite of a mosquito. But there's one important aspect that shows up, that you should not be taking aspirin or ibuprofen if you have dengue. Why is that? Why is that an important point to bring up for any of our viewers who are watching?
So both these drugs, which are what known as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, can at times lead to gastritis, and like we said, dengue leads to a higher chance of bleeding and your platelets coming down. So if you get a little bit of gastritis, or there's what we call erosive gastritis in your stomach or intestine, and then your platelets fall, then you may have a higher chance of bleeding from your intestine or from your stomach because of this. Therefore, paracetamol is the one drug which is recommended for bringing down the fever, rather than taking drugs like ibuprofen and others, which can at times lead to more gastritis and higher chance of bleeding.
All right, so take a paracetamol, not an aspirin or an ibuprofen. Let's just try and remember that, all of us. Dr. Will, let's go in for a short break. On the other side, we'll just ask you more questions about what we can do to protect ourselves, given the fact that we all in the north seem to be living in a gas chamber. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. We're in conversation with Dr. Randeep Guleria. Dr. Guleria, another question that's just come in from a viewer, basically asking, how does one differentiate between the symptoms of COVID and dengue? Since you said that you can get them both together.
So COVID is mainly a respiratory infection. So predominantly people will have sore throat, cough, running nose and fever, followed by body aches. Dengue, on the other hand, is a mosquito-borne infection, doesn't cause fever, sore throat and cough, but will lead to high-grade fever, headache, body aches, and you can get a skin rash also. So there are certain features which differentiate between the two, but in the early stage, if you have just fever and body aches, it's important that you really consult your doctor to rule out whether it's dengue or COVID. But respiratory symptoms, more likely to be COVID. No respiratory symptoms, but more of fever and body aches and headache, more likely to be dengue.
So use a little bit of common sense also over there. And what about diet, doctor? When COVID began, we saw this, the sale of vitamins and supplements, etc., really zoomed. Many people were just taking them without really studying them, but just saying it was kind of a placebo effect. When it comes to dengue and when it comes to COVID, what would you advise about diet?
So I'd say a normal healthy diet is what you need to take. There is really not much data. There have been diets for both dengue and for COVID. I do remember a lot of diets were prescribed to decrease or supplements were prescribed to increase your platelets as part of dengue. And we had a lot of drugs which were prescribed for you to increase your immunity as far as COVID is concerned. But scientifically, there's not much data to support any of these supplements or diet. A good healthy diet with green leafy vegetables, fresh fruit, which is balanced, is something that we should take. I would say in dengue, three things we say that avoid a lot of deep fried, spicy food because that will worsen your gastritis and you may have a higher chance of nausea, vomiting, or bleeding in the gut. Sometimes we also advise people to avoid red colored juices because if you vomit out, then you're not sure whether this is the juice that you vomited out or whether it's blood that you're vomiting. So you just need to be careful about that.
All right. And doctor, there was something in the papers today about a rare case of post-dengue mucormycosis reported at Delhi's Apollo Hospital.
So again, mucormycosis can happen otherwise also. And it's not very clear whether it's dengue is the cause of it, but a lot of people with underlying diabetes can develop mucormycosis. Whether you have dengue or whether you don't have dengue, mucormycosis was seen even in the past for many years in diabetics with poor control, both involving the sinuses and the respiratory tract. So it's likely that this is there are two diseases which have happened at the same time rather than a cause and effect relationship.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Guleria, as usual, for your time, for joining us tonight.